I'm so delighted to have this opportunity to speak with Christian Valeriani. Christian, how are you doing today?
I'm really well, Todd. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate your time and considering me.
Oh man, well, you've been extremely gracious and accommodating my request for podcasting time. So I really do appreciate that.
Cool,
And I'm
cool.
excited to introduce our listeners to you and your yoga path, your yoga journey. To begin, can you tell us a little bit about where you are and what the name of your studio is?
Sure, sure. I'm on the beautiful Jersey Shore coastline. So, if anybody's familiar with the Asbury Park area, a la Bruce Springsteen from 1,000 years ago, I live 5 minutes from Asbury Park, so like 35 miles south of New York City. My yoga studio is EvenFlow Yoga, and for some of the listeners out there, you might be thinking EvenFlow like Pearl Jam. Yes, like Pearl Jam. But also for those listeners out there, if you're familiar with BKS Iyengar, the amazing man who wrote Light on Yoga, he also wrote a book called Light on Life. And in the beginning of that book, in the intro, he talks about the importance of yoga being a breath centered practice. And he talked in this one excerpt, I'm paraphrasing, and he talks about how when we get into our practice and on our mats, we should have that even flow of breathing. So serendipitously, I was reading that while in that same time frame, I was trying to figure out like a name for my studio, and I wanted to link it to like either the Grateful Dead or a Pearl Jam or something. And then I read that, and I'm like, aha,
Yeah.
even flow. And I think that, and it's stuck, and that's been 17 years.
The aha moment. What do you think the chances are that Eddie Vedder was reading Light on Life when he wrote the song?
I think Light on Life came out after that, came out after the inception of Pearl Jam,
Oh,
but
yeah, good point.
there's a great music festival in Asbury Park called the See Here Now Yoga Festival. Excuse me, music festival.
Yeah.
And Pearl Jam headlined like 2 years ago, and I was going to show up with a big sign that says like "Even Flow loves Pearl Jam," but COVID hit,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we had really weird snafu with the tickets or whatever. But maybe one day Eddie will understand that there's a studio named after his song.
What is the impetus behind the See Here Now? Right away, I thought of Ram Dass's Be Here Now. Is there a connection between the creation of this festival, that name, and Ram Dass?
I wish there was, but it's actually CSEA, like the
Ah,
ocean. So
yes.
see here now. So I think it's a take on be here now, but it's the
Yeah.
sea. It's a surfing, yoga, and like music festival, which is pretty cool.
What a
But
cool
be here
idea.
now, be here now is like the greatest. That's like our the hippie manifesto right there, man. Right? What a
That
great book.
I know that was the first yoga book that I picked up, and it was a mind opener for sure.
Can I tell you a really quick story about that,
Yeah,
man?
you can, please.
Awesome. I love telling stories. I think hopefully they're relevant. But my wife and I went out to San Diego a few years back. This is BC before child, and and so we're in San Diego, really close to the ocean, in like this little like surf taco shack, whatever, right? And I see this young kid outside the taco shack, and he's got a copy of Be Here Now in his hands, and he has these two young girls who are like all doe-eyed, like, oh, and he's like reading from the book, and I'm like, look at this guy, right? And so he comes into the restaurant, and they sit down near us, and my wife and I were done eating. We get up to walk away, and I walk by. I said, hey man, I said, you know great book,
Yeah.
and you follow, it's really cool to see younger generation like reading this book. And I was like, have you followed like the Ram Dass podcast or whatever? And he's like, yeah, man, who's Ram Dass?
Oh,
And I'm like, dude, the guy that wrote the book, man. It's the guy that
oh,
wrote the book, and he was just like, oh yeah, all right, cool. So it's
that is
great,
classic. He
great
might.
book, great guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember the first time you saw that book?
Wow.
Can you
Uh,
remember what the
I'm
moment?
40. Just to give you some context, I'm 48, so I'm a 1975 kid,
Uh-huh.
probably like 15 years old when I was in high school.
Mhm.
So I'm like an old school like hippie. Like
Me too. There it is, the dancing
there
bear.
it is. So when I was getting into like the Dead and the whole deal, I picked up that book and I was just like blown away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
blown
cool,
away.
man. That's amazing. My first glimpse of that, I was 17 on the island of Maui, and a friend of mine around about 11 p.m. at night said, "Hey, let's go to this teepee out in the jungle." And we go into this teepee, and there it is. And I start flipping through it, just going, "What in
Mhm.
the world?" And that first picture of Hanuman ripping his chest open with Rama and Sita, in his heart. And I'm like, what is this? And then the artwork is so psychedelic, and the way he writes in that book. So anyone listening, you have to get a copy of Be Here Now. I think it's a part of
Oh,
every yoga library as a
sure.
staple. Yeah.
Sure. Let me give you
Oh,
another story on Ram
please.
Dass real quick.
Yeah.
So, for those out there who are familiar with Krishna Das, the kirtan singer,
Yes.
I've been following Krishna Das forever, and so every year, again, BC before child, I used to go up to the Omega Institute in New York State, which is like, it's like summer camp for adults, and so they have what they call the ecstatic chant, which is on Memorial Day weekend and Labor Day weekend. And it's just, all the great chanting artists, Krishna Das, Jai Uttal, Sanatam, Carol Kalso, the whole thing. And and there's and for those weekends, they do a 24-hour chant that they start at like Saturday at noon, go all night into Sunday at noon. And
Wow.
so the one particular Saturday night that I was at this, I had gone for 8 years in a row, whatever. They did a simulcast of Ram Dass from Hawaii. So
Wow.
they had this big screen, if you can imagine, like this big wooden like amphitheater with like 500 people in it, like really close. And there was this big screen TV, and they got Ram Dass to come in, and he's like on the screen, just like his head, right? And Krishna Das was on stage about to play. Now, some people don't know that Krishna Das and Ram Dass were in India together at the same time, studying under their guru,
Neem
um,
Karoli Baba.
Baba, right? So they flash the screen, and here's like Ram Dass, and then there's Krishna Das, and the two of them are just looking at each other, and
Mm.
they stared at each other for about 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
You could hear a pin drop in the place, and they're
Wow.
just looking at each other. And finally, Krishna Das goes, "What's up, Ram?" And Ram's like, "What's up, Krishna?" And the whole place just like burst out in laughter, and it was just like one of those moments where it was beautiful to
Yeah.
be a witness to two
Yeah.
men who had experienced so much together
Yeah.
and then had gone their separate ways thereafter and have created so much of their own respect, but just holding the space for one another. Like
Yeah.
there was intimacy, there was
Wow.
a kinship. There was like you could almost watch them going through their memory like a film, and they were just holding the space for one another. And it was just,
Wow.
man, what a moment!
Man, that sounds so cool.
Like what a moment, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
It's amazing. That's that's cool. Do you,
it's
well,
cool.
first of all, I want to make reference to the fact that or twice you mentioned BC before kids. How many children do you have and how old are they?
I have one daughter who's 5.5, 5.5 going on 30.
Yes.
So
And
yeah,
have you settled into parenthood? Are you enamored with it? Do you miss the old days, BC? What are your thoughts?
there is nothing I'd rather be in this moment than a parent to my daughter.
Yeah,
She's
amazing.
the best. She's
Yeah,
so cool. And it's just
yeah,
a great opportunity for me to take all that yoga and all the tools, yoga, sobriety, all these things I've learned over the years
yeah,
and apply it to being a parent and being present with my child and really most times taking the perspective of, I'm the student.
yeah.
Like she's the
Yes.
teacher. Like she's the one that doesn't have the developed ego yet. So
Yeah.
she sees every day with fresh eyes.
Oh, that's
Look at
cool.
her. And I look at her and I go, oh, that's what I should be doing. Instead
Yeah,
of starting the narrative in my head as soon as I wake up in the morning, right? So
yeah.
I'm blessed to have such a healthy, amazing, really cool kid. She's a cool kid. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Are you a born and raised Jersey boy?
Born and raised in Jersey. Yeah. Born and raised in
Right there
Jersey.
in Asbury Park?
A little town, a small town called Coltsneck, which is about 15 minutes north of Asbury Park. Went to Rutgers, have a degree
Nice.
in English from Rutgers, worked on Wall Street for, 7 years before I got into yoga. I have a kind of interesting, kind of a meandering path,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think is great. We all should have that.
Did you begin yoga before working in the investment world, or was it the other way around?
It was the other way around. So kind of to encapsulate,
Hmm.
um, when I got out of college, yeah, I scored a job, working for Smith Barney. at the time. And after quite some time and being in that environment, my addiction to alcohol and drugs got really bad, and so I got sober on April the 13th, 2002, and but I was still working in that industry, and you know, and everything that accompanies working in that industry. It's not the industry's fault. It's you know, it's my own stuff. But after like 3 years of being sober, I was like, this is not what I was meant to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think I'm good at this, but it's not really. It wasn't feeding my soul.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I was getting into yoga pretty heavily at that point. Um, Matter of fact, one of the guys that was in my like sober network of groups who had been doing yoga for like 20 years, he said, you know, in his very refined North Jersey accent, he says, "Hey, yo, young dog." He's like, "Why don't you do the yoga?" And and serendipitously, I kind of ran into this yoga class like the next day
Yeah.
and started doing it. And the more I did yoga, the less I wanted to work in that job. And then one day I just quit, got my yoga certification, Shivananda trained 200 hour, Dharma Mitra trained 500 hour, and then just started teaching yoga and then opened up my own studio.
Amazing. I,
Yeah, really cool. I mean, I didn't have, you know, I wasn't married. I didn't have a child. I didn't really have much responsibility. So I was like, now's the time.
yeah.
Like all I have to do is like wake up and go to work and
That's
go to like AA meetings like 7 days a week.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's amazing. So Shivananda, did you do your training in Nassau in the Bahamas, or where did you go for? Because you mentioned before we started, I had a flight to the Bahamas, so that just made a connection. Was that what
Okay.
your Bahamas
No,
trip
no,
was?
I wish that were the case. You know, at the time, because I was still married to my job, I had to find somewhere local, and there was actually a Shivananda branch local. And I'm so grateful for the people. I could cry thinking about it because you know I remember I'm an ashtanga practitioner by at base. That's how I was brought up in the ashtanga world.
Mhm.
And I was just looking to get certified. So I was like, oh, what's local? Like, oh, that's local and it's convenient. Like, I'll do that. And
Yeah.
so, without the intention of ever really like necessarily learning the Shivananda, you know, kind of
Yeah.
lineage, philosophy, or whatever,
Yep.
I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And the people that ran it were fantastic. Omkar and Radha, they're like amazing people. And then I went to Manhattan to do my 500 with Dharma. So,
Amazing.
so
That's
both of those trainings very spiritually steeped. You know, not so much like you know, alignment and mechanics, but very kind of heartfelt, which is what I needed at the time, and it was fantastic. But I also, you know, fast forward a few years, I ran a teacher training with Rodney Yee. He and I partnered on a training together, so I actually learned more Iyengar from him.
mm,
So I have a little bit of this. I feel very fortunate that I have this kind of confluence of
yes.
the spiritual background, but then the mechanical background that Iyengar, you know, taught, and so it's a good combination.
Very cool. What was your thoughts the first time having previously practiced Ashtanga, going into a Shivananda class? And I'm sure everyone might structure things differently, but was the first Shivananda class you did the first pose headstand?
Yeah, so it was yeah, we did pranayama, right? So we did you know, intention, pranayama, you know, Surya Namaskar, and then after Surya Namaskar, Shavasana for like 2 minutes, and then headstand, shoulder stand, plow and fish, right? So that's the, you know, the trilogy. So that was the first one, but you know, the headstands for 5 minutes.
Yeah, correct. Right.
Yeah, yeah. So I was like, all right, let's do this. You know, for
So
6 minutes.
it's so interesting. I remember the first time I went to Shivananda class and they said, all right, let's begin with headstand. And I was like, wow, okay. Because I just had always been this thing in my head that headstand was like a finishing posture or a
For
closing
Ashtanga.
experience for Ashtanga. And
Yeah,
I love that it just kind of flipped me on my head and then my
sure,
viewpoint right away, right off the bat.
sure.
Isn't Dharma Mitra's guru also under the Shivananda lineage?
Swami Gupta, I believe is his name.
Is there
I
an
don't.
association with Shivananda? I was just,
It might be.
I was,
It
okay.
might be. Well,
Yep.
what's interesting about Shivananda as well, Todd, is that the final pose or the penultimate pose before Shavasana is Trikonasana, is
Mm,
triangle, extended
mm,
Trikonasana.
yeah.
So, you know, the idea is that, you know, inversions considered complete poses, right? would go near the end of the practice, which would prepare you to kind of drop your energy down for Shavasana. But it's interesting how Sivananda says, well, hey, do this at the beginning of your practice to essentially ground yourselves,
Yeah.
right? And then start to move through the practice and then get into the lateral compression and extension to neutralize the spine before Shavasana by way of Trikonasana. So it's kind of like an interesting,
Yeah.
two very valuable and great practices,
Yeah. Yeah.
different
Yeah.
structure to it, but powerful nonetheless.
Yes. Yeah, I love that aspect that if we get initially initiated into a specific structure, that then to go and study another structure that's just as quote traditional or authentic, and for them to do it completely different, for me that was such a great eye-opening experience because it made me think, well, what is normal? Like, what is the baseline for,
Sure.
a good yoga practice or a real yoga practice? After your years of study and practice now, what do you gravitate toward in your own either personal practice or when you lead a class? If you were just to kind of map out a simple outline of a structure that you tend to like to follow.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I could probably spend an hour talking about it, but you know,
Simple outline. Simple outline.
well,
No,
for me, for what I think the most, I think one of the most profound roles that a yoga teacher can play inside of a kind of a general class, open class setting is keeping the pace of the breath, being the metronome,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But then I think that my style, which comes, yeah, I'm also friends with Jason Crandall. He's done some like workshops at my studio years
Wow.
ago, whatever. And so
Cool.
I love the way that he teaches in that, and I'm not saying this in a negative light, but like Jason is fantastic, self-deprecating humor. He's just a real person, but he also like knows what his students want. Like he knows that his students want serenity, but they also want to work out, right? And I don't look at yoga as a workout, and I don't subscribe to it as a workout. Yes, it's an exercise for sure. There's effort, no doubt. But I've tried to create this style whereby I can have enough of a even flow, even paced practice that I can keep
Mm,
the breath count, but
yeah.
in between those breath counts, weave in the cues for proper alignment,
Nice.
right? And also not creating this circus, if you will, of going from like twisting one way to twisting the other way immediately. I'm all about like come back to neutral for the shoulders and the pelvis,
Yeah.
just like we come back to the breath, and we
Mm,
tether ourselves to the breath to create that mindfulness. So I think there's a lot embedded inside of crafting a yoga practice that is valuable to everyone. But I think a really important role for yoga teachers that I think gets lost a little bit. I don't know why or where it gets lost, but like keeping the breath count for an hour or an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and a half. And it's so valuable to the students because they can be so easily untethered, right? One little noise, their Apple Watch goes off and it's like, and all of a sudden they're out of their breath. But if you're sitting there and you're keeping that breath count and they're invested in that, that's where the magic is. Because
yes.
at base our yoga practice is a breathing. It's a breathing practice. It's a self care practice. It is an exercise, but it's not necessarily a workout. It can be depending on your perspective, but it's really all about can I consistently stay tethered to my breathing for Yoga Sutra 1.2, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. How do I reduce the fluctuations of my mind? Right? Stay
Yes.
tethered to something.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And if you need to go to an open class for a teacher to count out your breath count, great. And that's I think is really important. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
It does. That was great. I'm curious in relation to, because obviously you love music. I guess
yeah.
I would like to ask, do you play music? Have you experimented with instrumentation or?
I used to play music back in the day.
Mhm.
When I first started teaching yoga and I didn't know any better. This is not a knock against anyone who teaches yoga with music. That's not the point.
Yeah.
For my own practice, I didn't know any better. And I
Yeah.
was playing music and it was great. But I stopped playing music about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's no music in my classes because I feel that we have enough distractions. And as much as music can make the yoga practice fun, which I've totally have been in a yoga class where I'm on the mat as a student, and I've heard, a playlist, and I'm like, oh, I love that song. Like, and I've start rocking my head out to that song and like start moving my body, which is cool. It's very uplifting and very positive, but I'm completely distracted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I try to set up my classes where there's minimal distractions.
I
Minimal.
agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah, I stick to that same concept as well. I remember being in India
Cool.
and hearing the storyline that Madonna went to practice in Mysore with Batabi Joyce and Sharat,
Right.
and she said, "Where's the music?" And I guess the answer Sharat gave her was, "The breath is the music." And once I heard that, I went, "Wow, that makes perfect sense." Like you got this even rhythm going with your breathing, and that's what music is. That there's a rhythm to it, and so I like that. I'm happy to hear that because I know the trend. And again, I agree with you, not to knock or say anything against this or that, but I do agree that it's a beautiful thing to have a quiet space when
Sure.
practicing, the ability to
Yeah.
hear that.
And to your point, like with the Ashtanga practice and the heavy ujjayi, I
Yeah.
mean, you are really tuning in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what happens is, and this is kind of interesting to me, a lot of people think that the ujjayi breath is like a restriction.
Mhm.
It's an opening
Yeah.
in the back of the throat.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that, like, Darth Vader, it's
yeah.
actually more of which is like it's such a different personality, right? Like, if I can totally go off on a tangent, my default setting it always has been. I'm like an Aries, like type A. My default setting is to just ram my head through sheetrock,
Mhm.
to get it done, to effort my way through everything. And so when I learned Ujjayi breath, I was like, the whole room could hear me breathe, ego, whatever. But then I learned it's actually a softening and an opening,
Mm.
and the whole breath takes on a different personality. And when the breath takes on that different personality, the way that we engage and move takes on a different personality. So, we have these thoughts and this heart that run on electricity, right? And the emotions connected to that heart and those thoughts. And so that one little shift in the sound of the breath or the experience of the breath can move you from sympathetic to parasympathetic,
Mm. Yeah.
right? Like, you can
Yeah.
literally tell inside of a class if you're holding plank for a long time and people are like, okay, the first couple of breaths, everything's cool. And all of a sudden around breath 5,
Mhm. Yes.
we'll start to stress, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's those moments where we need to calm, because that's where yoga meets the road,
Yeah.
right? Under duress, how does the yoga practice intervene, right? And how does that intervention diffuse
Yeah.
the emotional reaction of the external stuff,
Great
right?
point.
I mean,
Great point.
it's classic pratyahara, or classic like
Yes. Yes.
removal or minimization of the senses for the more internal senses to enliven, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, yeah.
You have been able to, I saw you open your studio in 2008. Is that correct?
2008,
Around
yeah,
there?
yeah, 2006 I started teaching. Yeah,
6.
2008. Yeah,
And so that's a long time to hold down a studio.
it is.
Can you, and I'm
You know
sure
that.
yes, and I'm sure you have felt and seen lots of ups and downs, lots of
Mhm.
moments where classes are booming,
Sure.
economy is awesome, things
Yeah.
couldn't be better, and then other times where it's the opposite. I could
Mhm.
be wrong, maybe it's only been highs for you. Can you
Oh, you're right. No, you're
can,
right.
can you give us a little bit of insight? Like maybe those of you, someone's listening right now going, I wonder what it's like
Mm.
own a yoga studio. I want to own a yoga studio. I want to run a yoga studio. Could you give a couple of insights into yoga studio ownership to just make it real and honest about what the
Yeah.
experience is like for people?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for bringing that up. And if I could start off with another story.
Please. Stories are the
So
best way to tell stories.
before I opened up a yoga studio, I was at a yoga journal conference in New York City. And yoga journal conferences were very popular back in like the early 2000s. And so it's one of those things where you have a yoga journal conference, you have all these amazing teachers that you normally wouldn't practice with because they're coming from California and Colorado and whatever. So you basically stack your days, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's like 6 classes, or whatever. This one particular day, I signed up for an ashtanga practice with Beryl Bender Birch. Okay. Now, my ashtanga teacher from back home, my local ashtanga teacher, amazing teacher, really tough, really rigid, which I loved actually. I needed the structure back then. But I went and took a class with Beryl Bender Birch, and she must have been like 65 at the time. I'm not sure how old she is now. And it was the most gracious ashtanga practice I had ever done. It was like somebody was taking, the action of ashtanga, which is a pretty tough practice, and giving that action of the practice with like some oat milk and cookies. Like it was like your grandmother delivering the practice, right? So after this I was like, wow, this is because I only knew Ashtanga one way. So then after class, I went up to her and thanked her for class. And I said, as a budding yoga teacher and someone who maybe wants to open up a studio, can I ask what the best way is to create a following? What I really was asking her, is there a shortcut? And she graciously said, yeah. She goes, this is the way you want to do it. She goes, pick a time slot. Let's call it Monday night, 7 o'clock, whether it's your studio or some other studio. She's like, pick a time slot and dedicate your life to teaching at that time slot every week for the next 30 years. And that's how you're going to build your following. And I said, I was thankful, but at the same time, I was kind of looking for the shortcut. But she was right, because that's embedded right in the Bhagavad Gita, right? It's one of the central themes of the Bhagavad Gita, which is just to suit up and show up and then don't worry about the results. And so that really changed my perspective, because I have a business background.
It's a great story.
So
yeah.
I'm kind of like, I'm doing all the machinations of, business plan, P&L, profit and loss, all that stuff. But I can tell the listeners out there who might be thinking about maybe opening up a yoga studio, it's hard, and it's difficult simply because of the supply and demand. When I first opened up my yoga studio, 2008, there were like 3 yoga studios in my area, and I have it's a pretty populated area. We're suburban New York. There were like 3 yoga studios, and then within like 3 or 4 years, there were like 30 yoga studios. Yes. So at that juncture, it's like the old Yogi Berra phrase, like, if you come to a fork in the road, take it, but you get to this juncture where you say to yourself, do I have to reinvent what I'm doing? Do I have to make what I'm doing flashier to get more market share? Or do I just stick?
Great point.
Right?
Great
Stick to my guns, and kind of weather the ups and downs, weather the ups and downs, because there's plenty of ups and downs. In fact, for 17 years, I know that August is a very light month for me. It's been that way for 17 years. August is just a light, shitty month. You know what? Every August, I get nervous about August, but I know what's going to happen. And I know that September and October crush it, so I'm good. But it doesn't necessarily remove some of the stress. What I would say,
Thank you.
What I would say to the people out there that are looking to maybe like open a studio or whatever is, you have to find what the meaning of your craft is, and then just stay true to that for that longer period of time. Without sounding egocentric or narcissistic, I like to think that I teach from my heart, and I do my best to do that. And teaching from your heart includes not bad mouthing any other studios, right? Not trying to reinvent the wheel every year because you're trying to keep up with hot yoga is the new thing, or like whatever, right? Staying true to that, not sleeping with your students, that's really important.
Yes.
Yes. Basic things that are really important.
Yeah.
We have the unique, you and I and the people out there that own studios, we're in the unique position where we're in a business, but it's also spiritual. And so I think a lot of people have issue with can spirituality and profitability coexist? And a lot of people will say, well, you shouldn't be charging for yoga, which I can understand why somebody would say that. At the same time, I found yoga something that I love, and something that allows me to serve people. And it is my time. It is my expertise. It is the educational cost that goes into it. And I should be compensated for that, not in some, exorbitant way, fair with all things. But I think what's really, really cool too, and I'll kind of end with this, is that, through the, the vein of having a yoga studio, you can be profitable and make a living. It takes hard work every day. But you can also balance that out by really giving back a lot.
Great.
For an example, there was a young girl that was coming to my studio about 6, 7 years ago, high school kid, 16 years old, anxiety, stress, like off the charts. So she started coming to the studio. About a month after, she started at the studio. She comes in with her mother, and her mother takes me aside and says, yoga does wonders, for my child, but we can't afford the $20 drop in. It's too expensive for us. Can we work out a deal?
Yeah.
I was like, we sure can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the deal. Just let your kid come.
Yeah.
She's 16.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
struggling.
Yes. Yes.
She's hurting. Like, just let her come. I don't care. I don't care about the $20.
Yeah.
Like if I need that $20 every week, I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah. Good point.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, let her
Coming out of
come,
that. Yeah.
man. Let her come. And then you fast forward like a year later, 2 years later, whatever. She was like in college, and she wrote me this letter,
Oh.
this
Yeah.
gratitude letter.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is why I do this.
Yes.
Like I get excited at the end of the month when we're like, oh, we're having a good month. All right, cool. Now I can like pay my bills. But when I get letters like that bring me to tears, I know I'm doing the good work. And
Yes.
that's important. And that's important to me.
Oh man, you touched on so many great facets of what it's like to run a studio. So I think you hit some excellent nails on the head with that. I love that. It's very encouraging. I'm really thankful for this opportunity to speak with you. One thing
Yeah.
I love about podcasting is that it's like a form of like therapy for me because sometimes
Yeah.
I'll feel like I'm stuck over here in my own little corner and to hear other teachers and studio owners and practitioners in your stories is really encouraging. So, oh man, I'm really thankful for this opportunity, Christian. That was great.
And I'm thankful too because your questions are like spot on. It's great.
Oh, well, thank you.
Natural fit.
What is the hardest? I know how can you stack hard, harder, hardest, easier, easy, easiest. But what is one of the hardest challenges you've come up with as a studio owner? If you just could pick one of the big speed bumps you might have hit along the way. Or maybe you haven't. Maybe it's been, not that hard. But have
Yeah,
you have you had a big bump in the road?
I have.
Oh,
Um,
okay. God. I
I'm
was
trying.
excited. The longer the pause, the better the answer is going to be.
Most likely, the biggest challenge that I have faced as a yoga studio owner, um, and as a person, is me.
Oh, good answer.
I'm the biggest challenge.
Oh God, great answer.
I'm the biggest challenge. As a yoga studio owner, when you're dealing with the general public,
Yeah.
okay, you have 20 people in the room, 20 people coming from different experiences, and they're all going through different things. And you try to create this class and this energy that kind of brings them to par. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Um, but really, it's my own shortcomings that at times restrict me from not judging the general public and being unfair in my own head, not overtly, um,
Yeah.
because I think that yoga should be a particular way. Um, that's been my biggest challenge, but it's also been my biggest gift. So like
Mm.
yoga itself, it coexists in that science of opposing energies. My biggest challenge is me. and my biggest gift is me.
Mm.
In that, being able to learn from that experience and say like, okay, stepping back, what can I glean from these experiences? How do I shift? And then does that shift work? Is the trial and error of that figuring it all out? Does that work? And one of the biggest things that I've learned is, kind of as a natural, um, without getting overly intimate, being like a natural, traumatized child, egocentric, whatever. I want to please everyone. I want all 20 people
Yeah.
in that yoga class to
Yeah.
walk away going, that was the greatest yoga class in my life. And that's not reality. That doesn't necessarily happen. So, in that process of dealing with the public and understanding that I'm the biggest impediment to my own happiness, I was able to take a step back and say, I'm not going to be able to satisfy everyone. So, I need to be able to deliver a practice that is accessible to the greatest number of people. And then hopefully that works out.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, that's okay, because I'm going to have certain people that gravitate toward me and some people that will not, and that's okay. Like when I stopped playing music many years ago, there were people that just fell off and I never saw them again. Okay, this
Yeah.
is where I'm at with my practice, so I'll have the people that follow
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Cool. The acceptance of that is hard.
Yeah. Man, I just so the listeners know, I did not prep you with any questions because that was a good answer. That was a good answer. I was expecting some external situation, and the fact that you put it internal, or brought the attention back to your own perspective and experience, that is really cool. I like that.
Well, then what I'll do is I'll give you the external,
All right.
and I'll give you a story with the external. And I remember one time, I had a student in class, and I had known this woman for many years, brilliant, like hedge fund manager, left that to become a chiropractor. Brilliant woman. Hadn't seen her in years. She came back to my class, and I noticed during shavasana, she was whispering, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Maybe she has a mantra or she's praying or whatever. But as she kept coming back to classes, I noticed that during every time she came to class, she'd be talking to herself, and it started becoming a little bit distracting for the other students. So at that point, I realized that, and this is kind of a big topic these days. I realized there was mental health issues there. So at the end of practice one day, I took her to the side and said, "Listen," I said, "I'm not sure if this is like a mantra or a prayer or whatever, but you're a little bit distracting with the people around you. If you don't mind, like just keeping it to yourself, that'd be really helpful. I'm not judging it. Like I just want to have a real candid conversation around it." And she said, "Okay, I understand." I was like, "All right, cool." And then she leaned in and she whispered in my ear, "They're all watching us." And my heart sank.
That made my heart sink just hearing
My
from
heart sank. And I'm like, oh,
you. Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was a tough decision to be able to let her go when all I wanted to do in that moment was help her.
Yeah.
So
Good.
there's no overt challenge that I think is,
Yeah.
it can be very delicate.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Good one. Good one. That made me think of a couple of different experiences
Yeah.
myself too.
Makes you
Yeah,
great.
that's powerful.
Mm.
Oh, let's see. So, well, on that note, when you brought up the element of realization of traumatic childhood,
Mm.
the desire to please others with the hopes that that will then kind of nullify that feeling that comes with trauma.
Mm.
I'm currently reading a book called The Body Keeps the Score. Have you come across that one yet?
I haven't.
All right, fair
I
enough.
will now. I will now.
Man, powerful this morning. I was driving in the studio and I'm listening to it on audiobook, and whoa. So uh I'll just let you read it and we'll do another podcast discussion about
Totally.
your thoughts on it. But it's all about trauma, and it's just one of the best books I've ever read in that field. And I'm just floored by it. And then for those of you listening, maybe also if you can get a copy of it and read it, and then we'll come up with a way to forum a discussion around it.
Totally.
And because
Because
there's so much there, maybe we'll have to save that for a special topic.
yeah, and if I could just like add one thing to that,
Please, please.
one of the reasons why I fell in love with the first time I did yoga, like literally, I get out of Shavasana for the first time I've ever done yoga, and I'm like, ooh, there's something to this is
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
Now, understand, I had a little bit of time in AA
Yeah.
under my belt. So I was doing like this internal work stuff that was really intense.
Yeah.
But the one thing that AA doesn't necessarily address is the physical. And
Yeah.
I'm a physical
Yeah.
person. I'm like an
Yeah.
athlete. I'm an athlete. I'm a, basketball, soccer guy. I played rugby in college. I need to be in my body, but that's where I stored the trauma was in my body. And when I was in that first practice, and I was able to kind of release some of the tension in those tissues, man, I was bawling in that first shavasana. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I finally feel like a whole person for the first time since I've been like 9,
Yeah.
you know? And it was like, I'm just gonna, and like every good addict, I'm like, I'm gonna do this like all the time. Is there another class today? Like, do this like 5 times a day, whatever. But like, I never had like a therapy, really like a therapeutic kind of
Yeah.
modality that
Yeah.
addressed the physical.
Yeah. That's
And so
cool, man.
I can't wait to read that book,
That's
man.
cool. I know we'll talk about it once you do. And I'm not done yet, so that's why I want to wait till I finish it till I start theorizing about things. Can you tell me about your website, wisemen.health,
Yeah,
and what
yeah,
you're doing with that project?
yeah. Thank you for asking that and bring that up. I appreciate it. So the yoga business, great stuff, and you meet a lot of different people. And so this one gentleman started coming to my class a few years back with a background in martial arts. 34 years of martial arts background. He was been doing it since he's been like 8 years old. Great guy, great guy. And we started like BSing one day around like the similarities between like yoga and martial arts, and like he's a qigong guy, so we're sitting there and he's like dantian, and I'm like, yeah, man, like that's where it's all about working from the core. And we started just like talking, and then I bumped into him at the gym one day, and I'm like, what's up, man? And we started just like talking about stuff, and I said, man, I said, a lot of men are in trouble. A lot of men are in trouble. Stress, anxiety, all the different things that go on. And he's like, I agree with you 1,000%. So we started, sharing our own stuff. And I said, we should really combine forces. We should combine heads and put together some kind of like movement therapeutic like men's business or something. And he's like, all right, yeah, cool. And he's like, I know a guy in New York, Jared, and Jared runs these businesses, and this guy's rich is awesome. So we got on a conference call and we were like, hey, listen, I think we need to figure out a way um to pull men out of their normal lives, to get them on a retreat where they can experience yoga, pranayama, qigong, meditation. We can teach them about the importance of rest, the importance of nutrition, neurochemistry, how all these factors play into how you hold your body in space, emotionally, physically, whatever. And he's like, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. So it took us about a year of the three of us working after hours, 9 o'clock at night, getting on a call and working until midnight, putting together a marketing deck and everything. And so now we run men's wellness retreats, and they're successful. They're fantastic. The work that gets done there is profound. Instead of like going on a golf weekend with your buddies and getting hammered all weekend, like you get to go and hit reset, and you get to recharge your battery. Um, I think it's
Great
fantastic.
idea.
I think it's fantastic, not because I'm one of the co-owners, but like I feel better after those weekends. I come back reset, even though I'm running it and co-facilitating it. Like I feel good about it. And we import some different speakers that are like the experts in nutrition, um, transformational breath work, which is like so profound. So it's really, really cool. We have a local event coming up September 24th, which is going to be actually co-ed. We're working with this other group of women who are going to take care of the women, and we'll take care of the men. But then we're right now in the midst of finding a date for a fall retreat in the Catskills in New York. So men only. Cold plunges. We go into the river when it's like 48 degrees. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I want to
Yeah,
go. I want
yeah.
to,
Come on up,
yeah,
man.
I want to go. That sounds cool. I love, well, can you paint a little picture about the Catskill retreat? How many days?
Sure, sure. So the website is wisemen.health.
Okay.
And what we do is we get up there on a Thursday, and we just have basically check-in, dinner, fire pit, topic, intention for the weekend. We talk to one another. We get to know one another. And then Friday morning, we're up. We do 7 a.m. cold plunge in like 50, 52-degree water. The stream we were just in New York State, 48 degrees, even better. So we do the cold plunge, um, breakfast, yoga, or yoga breakfast, either one. And then we'll do like team building stuff, which is really kind of cool. We go for a hike, lunch, qigong, breath work, um, usually like a lecture on nutrition or a like subject, nutrition, abundance, all these different topics. And we do like an afternoon session of either qigong or yoga. Um, and we do, dinner and then another fire pit. So basically, we have that whole week of doing that. So it's a pretty packed schedule, and there's also room to rest. So we give like rest periods as well because we don't want to like overwhelm people to feel like they have to do everything. Because
Yeah.
for some people, they might be like, "Listen, man, I need to take the week. I need to take the afternoon off
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
been working my ass off at work,
Yeah.
70, 80 hours a week. So there's room for that. But we suggest everybody does everything that we do. It's a pretty well-oiled machine. Um, not to be like unemotional about it, but it's very structured
Yeah.
so that we can really get the maximum and optimal benefit of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it's really, really cool stuff. And I'm so grateful for the men that have joined us because they really get to open up and
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
vulnerable. And once that one person opens up, everyone starts to share. And we're like, hey, man, we're in this together. Like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I feel like women do this kind of stuff, but like men don't do this kind of stuff.
Why,
Like,
why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think it's just I don't know. I think like men. I think men like to go out. Yeah, and trust me, I lived this life back in the day. I think men like to go out and like go golfing and get hammered or like go to a concert and like get high and like whatever. And I think women are there to kind of like maybe classically, and this might be not so politically correct, but I think classically women are more emotionally connected. So I think they understand how they have to support other women emotionally, whereas men are kind of like we bust chops. You know, we're
Yeah.
sarcastic, we kind of rib each other, whatever, but we need that
Yeah.
work
Good
because we're
point.
emotional beings too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool that you're doing that. That sounds absolutely amazing. In relation to that specific retreat, so it starts on a Thursday, ends on a Sunday.
On a Sunday, yeah.
It's a weekend long or a long weekend.
Yes.
And how do people go? Like if I was traveling from Florida, I would fly into where, travel how far from that airport to get there?
Yeah. So you would fly into Newark.
Uh-huh.
So from Boca, you're like a 2.5 hour flight, maybe a 2 hour flight from Boca
Yeah.
or West
Yeah.
Palm. Fly into Newark. I'll pick you up in my car.
Okay, deal.
I'll drive you to the retreat center because it's on the way. It's literally on the way.
So it's like
So
an hour away. I'm so geographically educated about the Northeast.
yeah. So Newark Airport is
Mm.
probably 2 hours from where
Okay,
we
got
stay.
it, got it.
So,
Yeah,
so for me, I'm like 45 minutes south of Newark Airport. So
yeah,
like, just hop on the road, go to Newark, and just continue north. So it's
nice.
two and
Okay,
a half.
cool. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get the understanding of time and space.
Yeah, in fact, we just
Distance.
had a guy from Florida that came up. My buddy Mark, who like moved to Florida like 6 months ago. He's down in Florida, and he was like, "Hey, when's the next retreat?" I'm like, "Hey, it's coming up, man. Coming up in May." And he's like, "All right, I'm there." And he like flew up. It was great. Yeah, we're starting to kind of spread our wings a little bit.
That's so cool. Congratulations. I know,
Thank you.
to have the bright idea, then to follow through with the logistics, to carry it off, and then to do it again.
Mm.
That's a big process. How many of these retreats have you co-led thus far?
So far we've done three offsite retreats. We're doing one local in September, another one in the fall. So we've had three, which has been nice, and
Cool.
we've had feather in our cap. We've had 100% growth rate since the first retreat, which is fantastic. Um, so it's catching on, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to kind of to cast the net
Oh, heck yeah.
and to
Heck
get all
yeah.
those touches because I am not like a social media guy. Um, I need to be for the proliferation of my businesses, but there's a part of my it's a mental tick with social media, but like I have to do it. But it's a lot of work, man.
It's a lot of work.
A lot of
And
work, man.
You
And
know what?
things change because
Yeah,
you're like, hey, should I do the hashtag? Oh, the algorithm has changed. Now it's no longer hashtags. Now it's about like, the words
yeah,
inside the content. And I'm like,
yes.
just
Well,
when you feel like you have it down, it's like,
I'm going to help you out with that with this podcast. We're going to, when I
oh,
release this,
thank
well,
you.
the part of my, what I enjoy so much about this is that, like, one of the things I found really challenging with social media is I felt like I was always pointing the camera at me, and I'm like, why? I feel like I'm being narcissistic by just look at me, look at me, look at me. And now for me to be able to kind of point the camera at you and say, check out what this guy's doing, check out what she's doing, look what other people are doing. I'm having so much more fun now trying to like lift other people.
Sure.
And so I don't know, personally, that's been something I found that's helped me to feel like my languaging from like, God, I really suck at this, to like, loving doing this. And honestly, you are on
Right.
social media, so you are a social media guy, but I know what you mean. I
Yeah.
totally know what you mean, where you're like, dude, this is so much work, and I have so many other things I want to do. I want to hang out with my daughter, hang out with my family. I want to actually look at my daughter in the eyes and not stare at my phone for 3 hours at night to cultivate a 1 minute video.
Totally, man.
The priority.
Totally.
I know I'm so thankful for this time I get a chance to have with you, and I, for you listening out, for you listening, please indulge me here with, I've got to ask you, Christian, about your love for music, because I
Mm.
know we have shared favorites, and so I know it's a little off the yoga subject, but
Yeah.
I
Good.
promise I'll keep it along a yoga line. But
Cool.
when I learned that you're a deadhead,
Yeah.
and I got a chance to see the Grateful Dead when I was in high school up in Atlanta and Orlando back in 1990, and then out in Oregon, and I saw the Jerry Garcia band in the Warfield in San Fran, and
You
man,
used to go. You used to go to the Omni in Atlanta.
oh yep, yep, I remember when, oh yes,
Cool.
and
Cool.
the for me it was as a at that age, 16, 17, 18, I just was blown away by the scene. I mean, I never imagined going to a concert where the parking lot festival was more fun than the actual show. And then the show was so incredible. And the amount of energy at these shows were just, I mean, I remember the first time I saw the Grateful Dead, I mean, I just started crying right when they came on stage. I'm like, why am I so emotional? What is that? And I mean, the energy was just, I don't know how to. So I want to ask you, so maybe it'll help, because I know some people are like, oh, that don't like the Dead or don't like jam music. Just they're like, oh,
Right.
great. Please don't start talking about the Dead. But maybe you will help clear up or bring a little light to why is that scene or was that scene so
Mm.
amazing and fun for you?
I'll answer that in a couple of different ways.
Okay.
Bill Graham, the music producer and venue owner, once said, you know, people that like the Grateful Dead are like people that like licorice. People that like licorice really like licorice, right? And
Yeah.
so uh, that might give a little bit of a little bit of an entree. But here's the thing: I think what I gravitated to most. The music is fantastic. It's the craftsmanship is very high level, but there's also a community,
Yeah.
right? There's
Yeah.
community. Like you talk about the parking lot scene, that's like the community, man. Like these people come together. Like I would go to shows and see people and be like, oh, I met you like 3 weeks ago at the Boston Garden. Like, oh, whatever. Great community. But I also think what's very interesting, and this rings true for my personality, is that, I've been to some really, really, really bad Grateful Dead shows. And there's a part of my heart that actually feels guilty saying that. But near the end, when Jerry was just really out of it,
Yeah.
it was tough to watch sometimes. But
Yeah.
I've also been to some really, really, really great Dead shows. And I think what's really cool about the Deadheads is that, we look for like that one moment in time where everything is synchronized. And we go, ooh, that was awesome. It's one note or one lyric or one inflection of a lyric, right? And we go, and it hits us somewhere like right about here, and we go, that's special. And then you want to get that again. So that's when you go on tour,
Mhm.
right? Because
Yeah.
you're like, ooh, I got this night. Am I gonna get the same thing the next night or the next night or the next night? So you keep going to shows to seeking and searching for that next great moment.
Yeah.
So I think there's like the internal component, which is there's something very special. Bill Kreipson once said, we don't play music, or maybe it was Mickey Hart, the drummer. He said, we're not here to play music. We're in the transportation business. We want to transport your soul to
Yes.
some like, higher level. And I've experienced that both sober and not so sober, right? But we're searching for something. I think the Deadheads are searching for something, and we get a little bit of that
Mm,
by way of the music,
good answer.
and then we have people we can share.
That's amazing. And I've never gotten a chance to see Pearl Jam live, but you said you've seen over 30 Pearl Jam shows now,
Yeah,
something
they're
like that.
spectacular. It's a completely
Wow.
different energy, but the same camaraderie.
Yeah.
Um, and I can tell you, I've never seen a bad Pearl Jam show.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah. I've
always
never seen a bad one.
they're the
Those guys
consummate.
are always on. Those guys aren't losing it
Yeah,
backstage and
no,
coming
they're the
out here
consummate professionals.
responsibly. Yeah.
They're the consummate professionals. They know how to show up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. My wife says Eddie's her first boyfriend. And her second
Oh,
boyfriend is Rick Springfield. Yeah. So
oh,
I
cool. I
have,
love that. Way to go, 80s. Nice. Way to go,
and
80s.
I think Bon Jovi is in there too. He might be number three. So
Not a bad trifecta. Not a bad. Yeah.
That's cool. She's a huge Eddie Vedder fan. That's cool, man. Well,
But you
what?
know what? Like, but we operate on music.
Yeah,
Like the beating of our heart. We operate on sound. So there's a reason why people gravitate toward music, because we have like this own internal music going on. That's like you said before, with the breath being the music. Like, yeah, that's
yeah,
totally.
yeah, yeah. Have you listened to anything recently that you think I should listen to? Has anything caught you
Yes.
off guard lately that you're like, you got to hear this?
Yes.
Yay. All
So
right.
so glad you asked that question, because I'm going to go see these guys July 4th weekend, whatever, July 3rd, July 4th. It's a band called Goose.
Goose.
Have you listened to Goose?
No, I've never heard of Goose. I'll write it
Listen to
down.
Goose, because I can tell you, like, in order of like importance of my life in terms of music, Grateful Dead is number one. Believe it or not, Pearl Jam is number three.
Ah,
Number two is the Allman Brothers Band.
oh
So for my
man.
Atlanta people, I'm huge Allman Brothers fan, huge Allman.
Oh,
But check out Goose, man.
legendary. All right.
Check out Goose, man.
Goose.
Goose is good. I can't wait. I haven't seen them yet. I'm going to go see them in Asbury Park in July, and I just can't wait. Just anybody out there, just YouTube Goose live at Red Rocks,
All
and
right.
you will listen to the first two songs, and you're going to go, "These guys are legit."
You know, doesn't I've never been to Red Rocks. I haven't had a chance to stay in Colorado before, but
Yeah,
what is it about that? Have you been there?
have.
I'm thinking, of course. So then, what? I mean, just looking at the video imagery and then hearing people tell me about their experiences of going to Red Rocks, and can you give a audio visual take on Red Rocks? Why is Red Rocks bad to the
I
bone?
can't.
You can't.
Yeah, it's so amazing. My words would never do it justice. Just understand that the energy of the space is just awesome.
Yeah,
And you're surrounded, you're cocooned by this like warm, like red rock light. The sound is great. It's cool.
that's amazing. I had a bucket list dream come true this year, and I got a chance to see Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band in Orlando
Oh,
on this
cool.
tour. I've always wanted to see him. What
Yeah.
is your experience with being a local near Asbury Park and Bruce?
Everyone's gonna hate me. I think
No, I mean,
Bruce.
yeah,
I think Bruce is, he does really great by his community. I'm not a huge Bruce fan. Like, I love like classics. Like, I love like Thunder Road. I even like Philadelphia. It moves me. But like, I'm like a Bob Dylan guy,
mm,
and I feel like Bob Dylan is like the storyteller.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that Bruce is not a good storyteller, but like, I just prefer Dylan, so I never got into Bruce so much. But he's a really good guy. He's a really good guy. He does a lot in the community. And putting music aside, we all love some favorites and some classics or whatever. And it's amazing that he's still doing it. And what one of the
it
interesting,
is, isn't it?
I was watching a YouTube clip of Bruce on the Howard Stern show not long ago, maybe like last year.
Yes,
And what was
that was
really
good. That was really good, wasn't it?
it was really good. One of the greatest parts of that whole thing,
Mm.
that whole interview, is I felt like, and this never happens to Howard, I felt like he was starstruck. Like, he couldn't even, like, he was like, "Oh yeah, Bruce is here." Like, hey Bruce. Like, he was like a little kid.
He
And
really
I'm
was.
like, That
I
says so much about Bruce.
did. And I
You
thought
know,
it was really cool because I didn't know the backstory behind the storyline when Howard, I guess Bruce took a little dig, or Howard said something about if I could get your wife to come on the show. And Bruce is like, ah, she's like an old Italian woman that, holds grudges. Like, and I was like, well, I wonder what that's about. And then our communal friend, John Coleman, John was like, do you know what that's about? And I said, no. And he's like, well, there was something that Howard did that really kind of embarrassed Bruce's wife a long time ago about, pointing out what her voice sounded like in a particular track. But I love the way that they both just kind of let bygones be bygones, water under the bridge, and they're both kind of chill and cool with each other. I thought that was nice.
yeah, right. That is kind
I,
of cool. Yeah, he's a
I,
great guy.
I was just listening to Annie Lennox the other day and
Mhm.
her Diva album, and two lyrics from that. I got to read them really quick. They're really short.
Yeah.
Dying is easy. It's living that scares me to death. I could be so content hearing the sound of your breath. Wow,
Mhm.
man. She hit me with that one. I was like, I had to go and what are the lyrics to that song? Oh my gosh, that was amazing. And then I read the next one down the road. It was cold is the color of crystal, the snow light that falls from the heavenly skies. Catch me and let me dive under, for I want to swim in the pools of your eyes. Ooh. Something
Brilliant.
about lyrics, like, right? I mean, for me, that's
Brilliant.
like a yoga experience right there. Like a good
Yeah.
artist being able to
Mm.
bring yoga into words and music, it's incredible.
It is incredible to be able to articulate that. And she's so
Right?
great. It's amazing. Yeah.
Now, in
What a
terms of yoga music, you got a chance to mention Krishna Das. We talked,
mm.
are there any other yoga artists that you've gotten a chance to? Because it sounds like you got a chance to see a lot going to like those different chant festivals. And
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
other, have you had any experiences in that department that have moved you?
Yeah. I mean, Jayu Tal is
Mm.
absolutely entrancing. He's amazing. Are you familiar with Snatam Karakausa?
Yes.
I'm going
Amazing.
back like 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And I get tickets to go see her up in Connecticut and at this small little venue. And so we're hanging out. My girlfriend at the time, we're hanging out, and Snatam comes on stage. And if nobody has ever seen her, she's like this beautiful, angelic, gorgeous woman. And
Yes.
she gets on stage and it's like she's floating across the stage to get to her microphone.
Yeah.
And she has this really delicate voice. And she's like, "Hi, thanks everyone for being here." And then she sings, and it's like, boom. She has
Yeah.
this beautiful voice, but it carries so much weight. It's just like it's so invasive. It just penetrates,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
Whoa, she's doing God's work, man.
Wow.
You know,
You just feel it
she's
like there's some
in fact, you want to hear a cool story
tapped
for
in.
my
Yeah.
friends out there who buy yogi tea at the grocery store? Yogi tea
Yeah. That's
Yogi
right.
tea was
Yeah.
started by Yogi Bhajan,
Yeah.
who was the head of the Kundalinis back in the day.
Yeah.
So Snatam, she's like she's like this white chick from California, but then she took on her yoga name. Her mother lived on like a yoga Kundalini commune. And when Snatam was born, Yogi Bhajan went up to her mother and said, one day she's going to be the voice of our people.
Wow.
Now she is.
I
Kind of
saw
cool, right?
that's amazing. I saw her for it's funny because when you're bringing up the Yoga Journal conferences, I saw her at one down in Fort Lauderdale, and she did not sing at all. She
Oh,
just taught
she taught.
Kundalini yoga class, and that's so cool to think that she would have that skill tucked under in there,
Oh,
and she just doesn't even have to
real.
out when she's in public. Yeah, just like okay, I'll just teach yoga.
Yeah,
That is a sign of
yeah,
some humility.
yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing. She sings like an angel. It's
That
awesome.
that's cool, Christian. Man, well, I mean, this has been fun. I
Totally. Thank you so
I
much.
really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you for niching out some time out of your day. I know you're busy, family life,
Yeah,
studio life, and you've shared a lot of great stories. I love that you brought one of the biggest challenges is just jumping over the hurdle of ourselves. That's amazing. I
yeah.
love it. Is there any other thing that can pop to mind that you'd like to share with us before or as a like a closing ceremony?
Um,
You can take your time, and sometimes it takes a little time for something to pop in there, but
Yeah. You know, I think we're all fighting some type of battle, whatever that is. And sometimes those battles are really difficult and sometimes they're minute. But if we can just keep in mind that everybody's fighting something, going through something. So when we want to react and we want to judge and we want to point the finger, be kind. You never know what somebody's going through. You know, if you're driving down the road and some lady in front of you is doing 25 in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, you're getting all pissed off because you're like, I'm trying to get to my yoga class or whatever. You know, maybe she just got a phone call that her child got sick, right? Maybe she just lost her husband. Maybe she just lost her job. So just when we're like really, hell bent on reacting and like being self righteous, people are going through a lot. Be compassionate. Be kind.
nice.
Yeah, be kind.
Great message, Christian. I really appreciate it.
I would do this with you every day if you wanted me to. You're awesome. Thank you.
You
Thank
know
you.
what? You know what? The idea I had, maybe I guess I'll share this in public. Sometimes I think, should I edit my ideas before I blurt them out? An idea I had is I maybe if I could come to the men's retreat and do like a little journalism, I don't know, interview some people or somehow chronicle what you're doing. So I don't know,
That'd be
who knows, but all right.
that'd be great.
Oh
And if
man,
you and if
I
you
want
and
to
if
interview some of the people that are that are leading the retreat with you, and because
cool.
you threw off a couple of different ideas like breath work and then neuroscience, and so maybe I would greatly appreciate it if you can introduce me to anybody else that you think would also like
Yeah.
to join on. So any
Yeah.
of those
No
avenues I
doubt.
really appreciate.
I'm going
And
to introduce you to my buddy Rich, who's my business partner.
yeah,
This dude's been in like the healthcare field for like 30 years.
oh wow.
The smartest guy you've ever met in your life.
Oh cool.
And he's like
Thank
a
you.
martial arts guy.
Yes.
Uh, so smart. He can talk to you about neuroscience better
Nice.
than anyone. And that's really what this is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe we could do like for a little challenge for both of us where we do like an hour a day, 7 days straight. Or I don't know, like maybe and we could just come up with a theme and we'll bust something out.
Cool. Yeah, man. I'm down. That's cool.
Well, thank you, Christian. I feel excited about this. I can't wait to meet you in person, and this has been a great opportunity. And I look forward for future yoga practices together.
I feel the same way. You're the best. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it.
All right, have a great day.
You too. Take care, man.